Um, oh, let me log back on Canvas. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about our project first. And then we will go over the lecture. Our lab is somewhat short today. You will need to gain some knowledge in steganography for your project, right? The project I modified so it's not the same as it was last year. The requirements are the same, it's just the USB are different. Okay. Sorry, I have to sign on my email to get single sign-on for Canvas real quick. Oh, 40D? Oh, good. James Bow, right? Class. Yeah, we're gonna try to run that class again also. Maybe not spring, but in another session. Okay. So this is gonna be the last unit. You will find the information. Let me show you on Canvas. I know some of you already started looking. So after this week, we have next week is Thanksgiving break. You are going to have a week off, then the following week, I will let you work on your project. So if you want to come in, you can. I won't be able to help you much with the project. Maybe I can answer some questions, but I will not be able to give you directions or so everything that you've done in class, you should be able to use for your project, including today's lab. And then I'll talk about the project requirements. So, maybe referring to some of the lab that you did in the past for USB and then be able to do file carving with your storage. Don't forget that you do have a quiz that's due by the end of the week along with the extra credit before you go off for Thanksgiving. So when we come back, make sure that you have completed the assignments. If you have late work, make sure you turn that in by the 7th. So I can wrap up your grade before final exam. Final exam will be released. I will modify this, but I have a final review up already. And so if there's no submission, you just need to use it to study. Final exam will be activated the second week of December, and it's going to start on Monday and it's going to close on Thursday. There will late final will not be allowed, and you will need to use lockdown browser. So I will give you the passcode in announcement and also in the module. So make sure that you check so that way you can access. I will be here for final exam during class time. If nobody shows up by 7:30, I'm gonna close the door and go to my office maybe. But sometimes, administrators are asking to make sure that I'm here in case student wants to come in and take it here. So it will be activated on Canvas for that week. Do not wait till the last minute to do it because in the case that you can't install lockdown browser, during the last hour, that can be challenging. Okay. And you don't need a webcam. So right now we are going to talk about our course project. This is going to be due on a Wednesday because your class is on a Wednesday. So it's going to be due the day before the end of the semester, the 17th. When you look at that module, you would see that the requirement. So what we're going to be performing, and you can download the document or view on the page. We don't really need to do much with RAM analysis, but you are going to look at the content of the USB without opening it. So before you go home today, Don't forget, if I didn't give you one, make sure you pick up one. When you're done with the USB, please bring it back to me. I will be here the following week after Thanksgiving and finals week. If you can't bring it here during those week, you can also find me during winter break. Just email me and you can also drop it off at the makerspace. They'll give it to me. Likely that they're going to be open more regularly than I'm in office. So the project tells you that there's a company, there's some suspect that's leaking sensitive data. The IT department had captured employees' USB drive. And so the company's cybersecurity team has tasked you to investigate what's on the USB. So your goal is to find what's on the USB, including deleted file. There is a deleted file, okay? So you are going to use an FTK. So that means that you can use ProDiscover, Autopsy, Bulk Extractor, any of the software that we've been using, or even additional, like you've probably seen Access Data or FTK. Now, you shouldn't have to pay money to download the software. If you can use open source tool, that's probably ideal. My virtual machine is on my Google Drive. So in the case if you want to use a virtual machine, you can download it, extract it on your Windows system or your Mac system and use it. Just make sure you have VirtualBox and make sure you install extension pack. If you are running virtual machine on your laptop and if you don't have extension pack installed, you will not be able to mount USB. Okay. I've had many students in another class that asked that question, like, why is it not working for me? But it works here in class because it's lacking extension pack. Make sure your extension pack matches the version number of your VirtualBox. So if you install 7.2, make sure that you install extension pack for 7.2. Oracle archive all their software, so check your version because if there's a mismatch, you can also run into error. Okay. So we need to create a USB image. When you submit, you need to upload the image. If it's too large, you can zip it or you can upload it to your drive and then send me the link. You need to verify the image and document it. So that means that you need to create a hash for it so that way that it shows that you have integrity. You can use Kali Linux to build a hash. Any OS is going to allow you to create a hash value for your image. So, and then in some of the FTK, when you use it like ProDiscover or Autopsy, when you create an image, it also allows you to generate a hash for it. So make sure that we check that, right? And then when you document, make sure that you include the hash for your image. So you can say this image was created on this day and this is the hash value, right, from this device, and this is the USB, the type, the capacity, and so on. So we need to include the description of your storage and how we acquire and the image, and then what is the image made of or how you created it. And then after that, so you create a USB image, likely that it's going to be either a .dd file or if you're using a specific software, you can create its file. So if you use one software to make an image, you should use that software to read an image, analyze it, okay? So if you use Autopsy to make your image, you can make it into a logical file. That means that it's just a folder that has the content, the data set. Whereas if you make it like a drive, because it's not a bootable computer, it should not be like a disk drive image, right? So in Autopsy, you know how you click multiple options, you would click the logical files option. So you should make it as logical files because it's just a container that has a bunch of files in it. We've seen this when we did the Android and the last exercise. So once you create the image, you are going to document the image, right? Save that file. You can copy that image, you can use that image. You need to add it to your software and then you would analyze it. Don't open and access the USB, right? And then because that changes the nature of your file. I know it's going to launch auto run and that's fine. But as long as you don't open any files or look at any files, then it's not gonna modify the structure of the file. Because if you did open it, what will happen is you are gonna be off when you do the analysis. It's gonna have, like, when you access it, it's gonna change the timestamp there, okay? So when you go through the process, make sure you keep notes like what we talked about last week. And then you're gonna put together a document for me, right? We talked about how we can report. So it should have some kind of executive summary, or it should summarize like what did you find on the USB, and then summarize the process, but not too long, right? And then you are gonna have a narrative. That means that you need to tell me, like, from the start until the end, what kind of things that you have done, what kind of tools you have used. The more detailed you are, the better your report's gonna be, right? Make sure we do screenshots throughout, and then make notes as you screenshot, and then add that to the document. So the expected outcome, I will expect you to submit a USB image file, okay, a document that contains your summary and your narrative, which contains the process and the finding. I will tell you that the USB will contain a JPEG file. It also contains embedded files. It also contains deleted files. So I spent most of today working on this to make sure that you have it. And then it contains other type of files, right? So as you go through, you will be expected to carve out some files and tell me. So I wanted to see if you will be able to find some of the things. If the files are encrypted, I wanted to see if you can find ways to be able to open, to analyze the file, the content of the file, the exit, right, which is what we're going to see today. And possibly looking for password to decrypt the file, right? We didn't spend too much time on that. If you don't find the password, that's no big deal. These USB actually have embedded files, and I use steganography. So we're going to do the lab, and we're going to talk about that today. And so it talks about file carving on the USB image, right? You need to make sure that you have list the file carving tool. You can also use Scalpel, which is a lot of students, they enjoy using it. I didn't spend a lot of time in this class talking about it, but there are other options that you see in the industry. So I tried to include that so you can explore that. So when you're using EXIF2 or EXIF tool, you would see that it actually helps you find file signature. Some tools are better than others in specific type of files. Like if you use certain tool, it would only be good for firmware, or while other tools is good for regular files. So maybe explore options on how you can find file signature. So that means that if files have uncommon extensions, especially when you're dealing with malware or firmware, sometimes that can be embedded with like malicious content or something. So this is going to help you further explore if you like. Then you're going to analyze the recovered file. So make sure that you look at each of the carved file, how relevant it is. Does it rest assured that none of these have malware, but there might be something that relates to it, but it doesn't have any malicious content. Because I've had students ask me, is your USB containing malware? I don't want to plug it into my computer. It doesn't contain any malware, right? I want to make sure it's safe. And then when you document, make sure you list all the files that you have found. Do your best, right? The intention is to make sure that you apply the concept. And you can work with another person in class if you like. And if you want to work alone, because a lot of my students, they prefer to do the project alone. But ideally, in the real world, you know that you're going to have to work with a team or another person. So as you find the files listed, right, describe your file accordingly. So I'm going to show you how you can find that information in Kali Linux. And in Windows properties, if you look at details of the file, so file name, including its extension, file type, right? The size, the capacities is important. In some tools, it will only give you byte size, whereas other tools, it might give you like megabytes or, so However you want to list the capacity, that will be up to you. If you want to include file permissions, and then MAC time is big for forensic, right? We want to make sure that we include like when was the file modified, when it was accessed, and when it was created. So created, accessed, and modified, right? So we talked about that in the past. So we're going to look at that today as well. And you don't need to do RAM analysis for this. I actually decided that I will not include any DLL or any kind of malware because I just want to streamline the process for you. So review the content for your project. Make sure that you have everything documented. Okay. So how is this going to be broken down? If you have hash value in your USB image, you're going to earn 20 points. Okay. If you have file extractions and metadata, I'm going to include the RAM part in this. It's going to be, so this is slightly modified, so that's going to be 100 points. So the content of the USB, the file carving process, all of that, that's going to be 100 points. And then you need to include your document explaining what you have found, creating a timeline on, the content of the USB. And then, was there anything that would pertain to data exfiltration based on the case? There should be something that indicates that. That's my hint for you. Okay. So, that will be 80 points. So I would have a rubric and then I would go through your project. So I will look for whether you have found everything that you need to find. If you meet the requirements, so make sure you look through these questions. If you apply the concepts that we have learned in class and our lab exercises in our lecture, and then if you are reporting accordingly, right, from what you have found. So my advice for you is do your best. That's the intention, even if it's not 100% to what you intended to do. Submit what you have, and so that way I can grade something for the project. If no submission means it's a 0, and that will take a hit on your grade. So making sure that, even if you only got some of it, but make sure we dedicate time for it. I will be here the week after Thanksgiving, which is a week 15 in our semester. There will be no more lecture, no more lab. I will be available. So if you want to come in and work on some things, I can answer some questions, maybe give you some hints, but I will not give you actual instructions and details like what I've done in the lab. So review your lab and go through your lecture documents to make sure that, some of the things that you have learned should be applied to this project. Okay? So we can find this document on your project module and make sure we pick up a USB before we go, and you can bring it back when you're done. Okay. And if you travel and you can't be here during the winter session or return the USB to me, find me the following semester and give it back. The only reason why is I reuse the USB for the next class. And so, I'm usually I modify the content for the USB for the project throughout. So for part 1, right, this is what you need to submit: the USB image and your report document. Same document that we have looked at. So for part 1, you just need to upload the image file. You can zip it if it's too large, or share it as a link. Just put it on a document and share, and then upload your document. Okay. Make sure that we complete this. I should modify the date. Sorry, I didn't change it. By the 17th of December. Then you need to do a self-evaluation. This is a good opportunity for all my students and all my class to reflect and see what they could have done more, or they have met their expectation in the project. It also gives me feedback on whether you enjoyed the project, if it captures the majority of the things that we talked about in class. At least take away some of the things that you have done in this class, and that's what the project is intended to do. I would like for you to have your portfolio shared. Many of my students create wonderful sites and GitHub repository, but fail to publicly share it with me. If I have time, I will go look around on their profile, and sometimes I can't find it, then I can't grade it. So make sure that your Google site is public and leave it on for a while. I do take time to read through the project, so likely that I would spend like a week after your final exam looking through your project. You should use it and link it to your LinkedIn account or your professional profile. So you can choose to do a Google site or a GitHub repository. That's up to you. Okay. You don't have to do both. I've seen students submit both because they want to do both. That's fine. If you choose one or the other, if you haven't used GitHub before, use Google site. I had shared some of the tutorial videos I found that was easy to follow. You can choose the video, watch it, and then just follow the steps shown on the video. You should be able to make a repository or a Google site. Okay. So once you have it, you are going to send me a link that is publicly shared. Okay. And that's 30 points, and your self-evaluation, which is just a form that you fill out, and that's 20 points. So combined, that's 50 points. So this project has two parts. One is your report and your image. Part two is your assessment, your self-assessment, and your portfolio. Okay. Any question? Okay. So my suggestion is after Thanksgiving is done, that week for final review, work on the project. It shouldn't take you very long. I bought new USB drives, so they're small enough for you to scan, so you don't have to wait days just to get some results. So dedicate like at least an hour or two in a week just to work on your project. I would likely say at least about 2 hours to work on your project. And then finalize your document. Don't wait until the finals week, because if you have other classes, it's just going to be as intense. We do have a final exam that's multiple choice in this class. So there's two things that you need to complete before the semester end, is your project and your final exam. And final exam is during final exam week, and I will also be here for that. So I don't accept late project, and I don't accept final exam. As long as I've been teaching, and it's been almost 21 years now, I don't accept those things. Because to me, in the professional world, deadlines, right? If you don't make it, you don't make it. So even in some circumstances, that's why we want to have some time to work on it. And I'm here again the week before the final week for questions if you need me. Okay. Any question regarding your project? Okay, I'll try to upload this video by tomorrow. Okay, so if we go to modules, you can find your project module near the bottom. Okay. And then there are components. So when you submit part 1, that's your report and your image. And then part 2 is your link for your GitHub or your Google site, and screenshot of your self-evaluation on Google form. Okay. Make sure that we have time to look through the final review, download it, go through it. If you have any questions, let me know. It should entail most of the things that we talked about in lecture and lab. So you should be able to, no submission. Okay. And then I will have another extra credit opportunity with your course survey, so I can get your feedback on what you liked and what you didn't like in this class. And then also final exam in the last week 16. Okay, no questions, I guess. Huh? So this is the last lecture. Can you believe it? I felt like it was not too long ago we started, right?
Seriously.
Yeah. So it's been a long fall. But for most people, it's fast for me. So this particular chapter, it just focused on some legality, some procedures relating to court. So we want to talk about this. In the case that if you work for the sheriff department, the county, or companies, and you work on cases that would require you to be affiliated with the legal aspect of the case. Like fraudulent cases, theft cases, even now you see computer abuse or data leak or anything like that, you would have to go through some procedure. So it talks about the proceedings, and this is US-based proceedings. Just keep in mind that if you operate with international companies, sometimes you would have to look at like, how it is in Europe or Asia or, South America or Africa. It depends on where your company would be. So it talks about how your jurisdiction may differ because we talked about like, oh, how do we acquire things? We might have to have a judge sign off on some of the things. So it talks about grand jury where there would be a panel. You probably heard about this. And in the case that it goes to court, they would subpoena, right? For forensic investigator to share their perspective, which is the testimony. So in the case that if you work in this area, you will likely go to court and they would open up your report that you write, right? And you need to validate what you find. And so that can be important, okay? And then you probably seen it in many cases when they go through arraignment or hearing. This is when, in the case where there's criminal activities, it could be, company versus company, individual, former employee versus company. So arraignment, the hearing, and everything that is, if you are part of the witness area, and also the evidence that you provide, it has to go through both attorneys, so that way they evaluate whether they would support that or not for the case, right? So, and then it talks about detention hearing, where if the accused is detained, where they would request another arraignment for hearing, so that way they can maybe get some kind of parole or whatever it is. So sometimes that will be the case. And then your evidentiary hearing, this is where you would present the evidence to the jury. Now, they can exclude some evidence, and also the attorney can request to exclude specific evidence. So you can go through and find a lot of evidence, right? But then depending on which side, right, when they present it, the judge can say, no, we will not allow this, or one of the attorney would say, no, I don't want to include this, and they would have to state the reason why, right? And then there's the depositions is where you would have sworn testimony outside of your confined court. And this is typically for litigation in the civil area. Okay. Then you would have witness, and the witnesses would need to be reviewed by the team, which is your attorney. Okay, so let's go through and answer some questions. So as a forensic investigator, when do you testify during the court hearing or the court proceedings? Let me zoom into 200. I think that's better. So when there is grand jury subpoena for testimony, so you will be subpoenaed to court to provide your perspective, right? And remember, we need to be neutral, okay? And the artifacts is going to give us evidence, and no matter, whatever it is, we have to be neutral and non-biased. It might be evidentiary hearing in the case that they want to provide evidence in future hearing, then there will be an evidentiary hearing in trial or in deposition. And so as a digital investigator, for number 2, your role in the investigation and how it relates to civil or criminal jurisdiction. So sometimes, most of the times, you will be asked to testify as an expert witness or as a witness. And you probably have seen cases on social media or TV or in a show or a movie, right? Where they might bring in psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, depending on the case. If it's medically related, they would bring in those experts to provide a perspective or an opinion about the case, right? That would relate to, the accused or the victim. So now digital evidence can span in very large aspect. You can have cases like kids being cyberbullied, people committing fraud, computer abuse, like somebody is launching attacks, you know, data leaks, data being sold and exchanged, lots of things. And then you have agency where, you're part of the group where you have to investigate a group of people, like for terrorism. So when you deal with more like national security, that aspect is when you would work in the area of government. So we would need to be testifying. So what's the difference between an expert witness and a regular witness? An expert witness can offer opinion after stating the facts, but your witness can only offer evidence or factual finding. So depending on the type of witness, right? Now, would that matter if you have the credential or experience? A lot of the time, the expert witness, that usually is a direct relationship, is that they might have lots of work experience and also certifications or degree that will reflect their work. But it also depends on the case and how they select their witness. So how do you go about if you are being subpoenaed for testimony? What did you need to do, right? They would likely reach out to you, but you need to communicate with the attorneys that are handling the case. You need to ask for their requirement for successful outcome. Like, how can I participate in a successful way in this case, right? And ask for the attorney expectations. And then you want to understand your case, so you need to learn about the participants, the people that would be part of the case, and that could be other individuals outside of the attorney, judge, victims, and suspect. You also need to learn about the suspect, the victims, attorneys, and the proceeding. And then you need to be educated about the points of dispute of the proceeding. Like, how can I appeal? Like, I said something, but now it's something else, right? So we need to see how we can make that kind of appeal or dispute. And then we also need to find out about the opposite side. So your opposition expert witness, and if they have prior or historical testimony, you can probably find a lot of information about people, right, and about public cases. In United States, if it's a criminal case, it's gonna have a lot of public information. If it's a civil case, even with that, you would have court records and those things. So those things can be requested, and it does take time, as you know, right? But you can also find that information online. Some court would require a certain period of time for them to release a document to you. The recordings, you can also have like court recording. Sometimes you can contact the case attorney or the judges, to have to request a certain things. But in corporate area, if you're looking at corporate, they might have historical information, like they might have used somebody else as a forensic investigator, and that person had left, so they might have record of it. You can reach out to them. There are many ways that you can research the expert witness that would be the opposition in that case. So digital forensic goes beyond just, performing it for cybersecurity, right? Um, so in many different aspects, what we see is that particular this particular area, it would relate to cybersecurity, but it also could relate to, like, I know some students are in the crime analysis program, it would relate to that as well. And then also have legal aspect. So what type of questions should you use to prepare yourself to testify as an expert witness? We would say what is the theory for the case? Does my theory fit within the facts of the case? What facts are central to my testimony? And what facts can I confirm or I cannot confirm? As you know, right, just like everything else, we cannot be 100% sure that those are the facts because it wasn't our experience, right? We were not in that, we did not use that system. That was somebody else using the system, for example. So you are only looking in from a perspective of the outside, right? So you're going to try to find as many things as possible, and there is a high possibility that you don't find everything. And that's okay, right? So if you cannot confirm something, be clear about that. If you can confirm something, what you have discovered and analyzed, that's what you can say, right? And what you cannot confirm, you should state that. But you said that it could potentially be like this, so we will make an assumption based on our theory. Okay. So if you want this information, you can also go back to the notes. The notes also give you courtroom elements and individuals or different people that holds positions in the court and their role in the court. And then in the preparation part, it talks about the difference between witness and expert witness. And then the questions that we just went over. Okay. And it tells you here that you should review your notes and your report. So that's why if the more notes and the detailed your report, that's going to help you in the testimony. They usually give you a list of questions that they would ask, the attorneys would. So you would go through those questions and prepare, kind of like an interview almost, right? And then we want to also prepare and understand the type of evidence that we need to interpret or explain. And in some court cases, so some of my students are IT specialists for courts. And what they do is they go set up, right, when there are cases at the court, like systems. Sometimes they're required to bring in computers, projectors to demonstrate things. I also had a friend that used to be a field technician for the county. And whenever they have checkpoint, or when the police have really bad cases like murder cases where they have to surround and the forensic team comes, and if there's digital forensic team comes, some of the technicians have to go and set up for those too. So you would see that they require some technical people, and also that the area that they're talking about here is your digital forensic, but however, right, you would see that they also have technical people to set up the equipment for you to demonstrate for your case. So to begin the review process as someone that can testify in the court, they will require your resume or your CV, right? Which is the next question. So what should go onto your CV? So your CV should highlight your experience, your professional experience, your education, as you know, that you would put on your resume. A lot of students, they would do like education-based resume, but from here on out, when you apply for a job, you should focus on your experience, right? I know that as you go, you would build experience. So highlight your experience first. How would that be related to what you can provide as a witness? And then your CV would then goes to both attorneys or both team of attorneys, and they would review whether you would fit as a witness. Okay. And then if you are, then you would be notified. So if they want you to be an expert witness, then they would let you know. So on your CV, it's a resume, right? You would need your name, your title, your contact at the top. So you can put your credential, like some people you would have their full name and then they have an MBA, they would put an MBA, right? A lot of educators do that because we work in like a credential-based environment. But also that would also help you, like especially if you are certified in a certain area like GIAC, if you are a CFT, right? A certified forensic technician, you would put those acronyms that would stand for your certification on next to your name or below your name. Okay. I recommend that because that just kind of say, oh, okay, this person has the knowledge and the skills in that area. Then you would put the field of expertise in the body of the CV. On my CV, I have different CV for here, and then professional resume for the technical world. So I do many different versions, and then whichever job that I apply to, I would look at the things they're looking for. But typically, I would have a section where I would state like, my expertise in certain area. And so you would include things like, for me, I would be like, oh, I have expertise in networking and cybersecurity and, so specific things you can also identify with the industry. And then you want to relate that to the testimony as well. And so in this case, if you have digital forensic type of knowledge and skills, you would state that. Synopsis of career education experience. So CV is slightly different than the resume in that it is lengthier, right? You can have like 10 pages CV. Most professors do. And professional people do. Resume, they typically want things like simplified, a little bit more list-based. I'm a technical person, so I like to list things and bullet things. So the easiest way for me to read somebody's CV and resume is to go down the list. So if you want to, many people, they write paragraphs of their experience and things, and that's okay. But my recommendation for the technical industry, for you guys, right? Try the bullets and organize your thing in a very logistic, right, methodical manner. The easier it is for people to pick up the keywords, the faster it is for them to determine whether you fit or not. So highlight some of the keys. Your resume should match the things that you're going for at least 80 to 90%. Okay, so look at the job description and the requirement, the testimony requirement, and you should plug in those things, not exact verbiage, but close to it as much as possible. Because now they have AI screening it. So, but that's, and then if you have publication, awards, licensing, membership, things like that, you need to add, and previous testimony. Okay. So how do you provide testimony in a trial as an expert witness? As an expert witness, you would be able to provide your opinions based on the findings. For example, right, there would be a case where someone is leaking data, right, and then you found the email indicating that that's the email account, but you have to correlate that email account to that individual. So you can say that this person had logged into the computer at this time, had this access, this particular email account at that same time window, right? And so therefore, we can conclude that this is the individual that we are suspecting that's leaking data, right? So in your document, you would also explain the same thing. So, and then you would explain like how you were able to determine that, right? In this simple term. Keep in mind that when you go to court, most people are not technical, so we want to make sure that to simplify the explanation so it's not too technical. The author of the book, he had a lot of experience in this area. That's like really his professional. So I was referencing what he was recommending, and he said that to speak slow, to add example and analogies on complex details, that always help people understand a little bit better. Okay, let me bring 8 down. Okay, so how can you ensure the integrity of your secure digital evidence? Making sure that we are following guidelines, regulation, and best practices. Keep in mind that you have state law and you have federal law, especially when you're dealing with individual privacy. That's a big thing for California and also a lot of other states. So, and then the procedures in keeping your evidence not tampered, we talked about that already in the past. Your evidence should be reliable and credible, okay? So your image should have a hash, okay? The software tools, we talked about this, it should be a tested software. And you want to test it with parallel or equivalent tool. You want to have outcome that is the same. Your margin of difference should not be large, right? If you do find difference in one software outcome than the other, you need to understand why, and you need to document it. And then we would have relevant facts to the matter. So we want to document the facts that would relate to the case. So, for example, if your case is around a financial system fraud case, you would focus on that, even though that you are investigating servers and networks, and it might correlate or it might lead you to additional information for a similar or, equivalent case. For example, if somebody is committing fraud on financial, they might also be committing other things like computer abuse and other things. So look at the scope for that. And if you are asked to testify only for that system, then your scope will be only for that system. And I think we touched on this before. And then the material to an issue that is being questioned. Now for 10, it says, what is considered to be an ethical practice? So for cybersecurity professionals and just in this industry, they really emphasize the practice that we do, and it has to be governed around ethics. So right now, as you know, that's the same thing for data analysis, because data tells you so much about all things, right? How you use your data, how it's shared, the privacy behind it. So to be ethical, you need to follow moral principles that really govern the behavior and the individual activity. And as an expert witness, you gotta make sure that you yourself is ethical, and your past experience and all of those things would also speak to that. So we want to make sure that we follow morals. So where can I go and find code of ethics information for computer forensic? You can go to International Association for Computer Investigation Specialists, your IACIS. You can find the website, or International Society of Forensic Computer Examiners. They also provide code of ethics for forensics specifically. So I had when I worked at another institution, I was also teaching digital forensic and had brought a company in to talk about like who they would hire as forensic specialists, what kind of things they were looking for. As you know, that this industry, this area of the industry is smaller. Okay. Even though digital forensic is highly demanded as a skill in cybersecurity analyst position, but if you are focused around the job itself, a lot of the times, they might require that you have lab experience, you might have all of these things. They recommend that you would start as an intern or somebody participate in an area that you can get a lot of hands-on practice and be able to build your ladder from there. But certification is also important. Okay. Why do they value certification? And this is the same for cybersecurity world in every area in IT. It's a way to verify your skills and knowledge for the actual field. And you would use the certification to also update your skills and your knowledge and changes with technology, especially if you have specific software that you are working with, and also systems that you're working with. And it's also used to maintain practices within your ethical principle in the field because the certification is really built around that kind of practice and the objectives really address the technical skill sets and the knowledge that we have. I think I provided some links for you in the Canvas, but I can share with you some of the certifications if you are interested in it. So many association or organizations offer lots of certification in other area. There are a few that really focus around this. As you know, that they also have vendor specific, right? Like FTK has their own certification because if you are a professional using that software, like I know a lot of police department use that particular software, so they would send their people to certify in that, or they would look for people to certify in that. So if you want to go that route, you can also look for vendor specific. In my opinion, if you first get started, you should be neutral so you can get a certification for forensic, and it's easy to find. So, of course, you can just search for computer forensic. Yeah, let's see. So this is a body that I'm looking into, and perhaps in the future we might offer more of their vouchers versus if we have funding versus CompTIA, because I think a lot more companies are demanding GIAC. And it is a little bit higher level than a lot of your technical lower level certification. So you can go for a GCFA. Some certification require that you have some experience. Like for example, ISC squared, if you go for CISSP, you cannot sit for the test. Even if you have the money, even if you have the knowledge, you cannot sit and pay for the test without having verification that you have a certain long-term experience, right? So when you look at the certification, it will tell you the requirement and the things that it is really focused on. A lot of DoD people go for this. So if you want to work for agencies, usually they provide this resource to you that you would go for this, or they would look for people who will have this, right? And so, virtual machines, actual programs, sometimes you have to do a little bit of code, and it is 82 questions, 3 hours, and you just need to score 71 or higher to pass, right? So you can check out something like this. So we talked about volatility, and we did volatility 3 for Windows, right? Also, so volatile assessment is big for that. Environment with incidents response, right? MAC time right here. Okay. a lot of malicious system and user activity. So you can look at like who logs in, detection of malware. That's a big thing right now. That's why I try to emphasize some of that in some of your lab. File carving with file system like NTFS, FAT, memory forensic. We've done that, right? Artifact analysis. We see some of this today and also in your project. A lot of Windows based. Why? Because so many businesses use Windows, right? Before long ago, I used to have a book specifically for Windows forensic. Microsoft OS is there, but a lot of this relate to registry key. You just have to know where to go to find it, right? We talked about like how to look for browser information, cookies, all of those things. So most of the things we cover as content. So this might be something that you want to, and you can go through and take a look at the practice test and see what you score and what you need to study. Kind of expensive though, these. I think, who else?
What is the difference between the analyst and the examiner?
Examiner is going to be more like you are looking into the evidence, like you're finding it. You know, like how people cover the scene and then they're taking pictures and versus if you're doing an analyst, you're actually interpreting what the evidence means. Yeah, so a little bit different in different area, like so technical skills, finding how that would be correlated to the case and so
Are
on.
those two different certs?
Mhm. But some company that will be just be either equivalent or the same position. In a lot of agencies and public sector area, you're gonna see examiner more. But now I think that they're trying to hire, if they hire examiner and analyst together, usually it's two different level. Okay. So I added the page in the first module. You can see that there are examiner certifications and you would look at the objective there. There's also network forensic analyst. If I go for a forensic certification, this is the one I would go for because I just have more strength in networking. Um, but it is also an area. And again, right, you're gonna have a similar test, but the format, you got less questions and then you just need 70% to pass and they would tell you here. So it's more of like looking at attack landscape, proxies, reverse engineering, some wireless network analysis. This is kind of cool. So like practice using Wireshark, C#, lots of things that you can use to be able to know that. And then encryption and encoding because you got like TLS for HTTPS and all of those things. So some of the protocols use encryption with it, piggyback encryption.
Would that all be multiple choice, or would it be like the Security Plus, like performance based questions?
There's some performance-based question. I think like the coding part. Yeah, but it's probably not too lengthy. They just want you to know if you know. Yeah. The way that people design tests these days, you are going to have that because, rote memorization is multiple choice, right? You can memorize the answer over and over again. What happened in the past, that's what happened is people pass the test, but then when they go to work, they can't apply it because they don't know how. So now they're designing the certification with some performance-based activity. And then CompTIA has changed, so let me double check. But you can also go for EC Console. They were the first to offer ethical hacking, as you know, right? They are specifically focused on the hacking forensic portion, which is kind of like the network one that you saw on the GIAC. But this deals more. So if you apply for incident response type of job at SOC, if you have this, probably pretty good. Um, so, and they are pricey. I just want you to know that anything EC console it's gonna run like 1,000. So, now I had talked to in the past, we actually bought a version of this, but for the technician, no students were wanted to use it when I offered it, so we stopped purchasing it. In the future, we'll probably look into to see if we can go through Pearson View to maybe look at licenses for access for that, but you can also take a look. Like some of the forensic stuff we touched on already, right? Mobile forensic, email. We didn't have too much cloud option here, but they have additional stuff right here, like malware forensic. Okay. And then for the CompTIA, as you know, we didn't have a voucher for this. This was something that, Pen Test Plus was not that popular either for some students. But if you want to go for a CompTIA one, you can look into this. And just make sure you check because sometimes they changes their tests as well. Like they discontinue a test and offer another test. Okay, any question? Okay, so we'll stop the recording, take a break, or take attendance and then take a break. We'll do our lab. Our lab is pretty short. I just want you to know how to do steganography, because there's some embedded files on your USB. Make sure you pick up a project USB for your project, right? When you complete your project, make sure to drop it off. You can, if I'm not here, you can bring it by the makerspace, which is Science Technology Building next to the stair to the library. It's to the right-hand side, right behind the fountain. You can go in there and you can ask them. My office is in there, so if I'm not there, you can also bring it there and I'll ask the staff there to keep it for me. Some of my students, they also work there. And then while you're there, you can 3D print, learn how to use a laser machine to laser metal and things, and it's free right now, right? Yeah, so they have some of the really good machines there. You can also laser out some wood. A lot of people go there to do like posters, laser print. You can even, embroider. Okay, there's tons of stuff to do over
I
there.
think someone making 3D printed crocs.
Yeah, you can do all kinds of things over there. Okay. So don't forget about your